So I'm kind of a couple weeks late to this, but I still want to talk about it. It's been announced that a deal's been brokered with Warner Brothers to make several more films for the Middle Earth franchise. I myself cannot be more excited. I'm a huge Middle Earth fan, and I've been wanting more Middle Earth content for a very long time. The Rings of Power is fine. It's been interesting to watch. However, it wasn't exactly what I wanted. Not saying it's bad. It's a very enjoyable show, but for someone who has been looking for a more accurate to lore adaptation, it wasn't exactly what the fans were looking for. So when I saw the headline for this announcement, I was ecstatic. That is until I actually read the article. The first project announced is a film that will be produced by Peter Jackson and his team, as well as Andy Serkis directing the film, which, in all honesty, is kind of the dream team to make any new Middle-earth film, because you know that if they are given the reins to do this, they will do it properly. They've done it before, and so that bit of the news made me excited. That was until I read the concept of what it's supposed to be. The working title of the film is The Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum. Serkis is also going to reprise his role as Gollum, which is great, but why are we making this movie first? Or at all, to be honest. Like, I love that we're getting more Middle-earth movies, but why give us a story centered around a character who we know his whole backstory and we know where he ends up in the end? You have a whole world that Tolkien created that you could adapt. Yes, any company that tries to adapt anything from the source material is very limited on what they can use because the Tolkien estate is a bit stingy with the source material. But there's still plenty of material to work with. Don't get me wrong, I'm still kind of excited for this, and I'm excited in general that we're going to be getting more Middle-earth content as the years go on. But I do have a few questions and concerns about this particular film that I'd like to address. But before I go into that, I just want to preface it by saying I am not a Middle-earth expert. I'm not a hardcore Tolkienian by any means. I'm a big fan. I've read the books. I'd consider myself an amateur Tolkienian at best. So there's going to be a lot of info I don't know, a lot of things I can get wrong. So if there are any facts of the source material that I get wrong, such as story points, timelines, character details, please let me know very kindly in the comments what I got wrong, because I don't want to look like an idiot. That being said, let's get on to my first question. What continuity is this taking place in? So obviously we know that the books and the movies are very different. Even the extended editions, which add a lot of detail from the books, still are not 100% accurate to the source material. So what I'm wondering is, are they going to stick closer to the books this time around, or are they going to continue with the continuity from the Peter Jackson films? And there are two main points surrounding this story in particular that really had me question what route they're going. So in the book, the hunt for Gollum happens over the course of several years, somewhere in the 17-year time gap from when Gandalf left the Shire after Bilbo's birthday party and when he gets back to warn Frodo about the ring. In the Peter Jackson film, this has been changed to where the time gap is much more condensed, probably right about a year. It's never really confirmed how long the time jump is, but based off of things some of the characters say and like points of dialogue, that's kind of the best guess to determine the time frame there. So this timeline difference is the first point I wanted to make. The second one is the story of the hunt is different depending on the book or the film. In the film, Gandalf tells Frodo that he hunted for Gollum for a long time, and then by the time he found him, it was too late. The enemy had him, and they were torturing him, and they were able to discern two words. That was Shire and Baggins, which Frodo points out would lead them straight to the Shire, which is why they ran off left and went to Rivendell. However, in the books, we learn that although Gandalf did technically search for Gollum along with Strider, aka Aragorn, Gandalf does stray off from that path and go to research the ring in Gondor while Aragorn continues the hunt for Gollum. And then Aragorn recounts the story of his hunt at the Council of Elrond. This is what he says. If a man must need walk inside of the Black Gate or tread the deadly flowers of Morgul Vale, then perils he will have. I too despair at last, and I began my homeward journey. And then by fortune I came suddenly on what I sought, the marks of soft feet beside a muddy pool, and now the trail was fresh and swift, and it led me not to Mordor, but away. Along the skirts of the deadly marshes I followed it, and then I had him, lurking by a stagnant mare, peering in the water as the dark eve fell. I caught him, Gollum. He was covered with green slime. He will never love me, I fear, for he bit me, and I was not gentle. Nothing more did I ever get from his mouth than the marks of his teeth. I deemed it the worst part of all my journey, the road back, watching him day and night, making him walk before with a halter on his neck, gagged until he was tamed by lack of drink and food, driving him ever towards Mirkwood. I brought him there at last and gave him to the elves, for we had agreed that this should be done, and I was glad to be rid of his company, for he stank. For my part, I hope to never look upon him again, but Gandalf came and endured long speech with him. Gandalf then goes on to tell the council of his conversation with Gollum, and Gollum essentially told them everything about how the enemy captured him, took him to Mordor, tortured him, and that's how the enemy knows that the ring has returned. So because we have those two distinct differences in the same story, depending on the book or the film, I want to know how they're going to adapt it to where, like, is it closer to the book? Is it closer to the Peter Jackson films? What continuity are they going with? Because essentially, if they make it closer to the book, it's then going to create a third continuity. And I don't think Lord of the Rings needs that. I don't think we need all these different continuities. I know technically the Rings of Power could be considered its own, but because it's so far in the past, I, in like my own headcanon, still kind of see it as a prequel to the films, not of the books, because they are, like, that story is so different than like this everything in the Silmarillion. And I'm not going to blame Amazon for that, because they don't have enough rights to different parts of the story to properly adapt it. It's still a well-made show. It's just not what I want. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. So my final thought on this point is that to make a movie based on less than a page of a book is a bit wild. But as much as I want this film to stick with the continuity of the Peter Jackson films, I think sticking to the book would make for a better film adaptation. But this brings me to my next question. Who's this movie really about? So I get the film is called The Hunt for Gollum, but I don't think Gollum can carry a whole film on his own. I think the route they should go is to make the movie about Gandalf and Aragorn, or just Aragorn's hunt for Gollum, and while we check in with Gollum throughout the film. I'm thinking like 60% focus on Aragorn and or Gandalf and a 40% focus on Gollum. One, because like I said, I don't think Gollum can carry a whole movie on his own. And two, if you look at it from a studio perspective, a Gollum solo film is not gonna put butts in seats. I don't think that he's the character to attract the average moviegoer. Like, yeah, you're gonna have your Lord of the Rings fans that would watch a movie about Gollum filing his taxes, but your average moviegoer is not going to go to the theater just to see a Gollum film. That's why you got to have someone like Aragorn or Gandalf, more recognizable names and faces in the film to get those people in the theater. I also think that in order to help with getting your average moviegoer in the theater, this film is going to need a little bit of star power. Usually I would say unknown actors, but I think we need to consider hiring bigger name talent to play these roles of Aragorn or Gandalf, which begs the question, who are we casting as Aragorn? So in my opinion, and if you don't like my opinion, let me know in the comments. I totally understand. You can tell me I'm wrong. I don't think everyone's going to agree with me on this. For Gandalf, just get the guy that's playing him in the Rings of Power. I believe his name is Daniel Wayman. I think he could do well with it. He's one of the few actors in the Rings of Power that I do like. And plus it could help kind of lend a little bit of continuity with all the different adaptations they're doing. Even though there's no beating the Sir Ian McKellen, I think this guy could do well with the role. But Aragorn, I believe, is the tricky casting. Now, obviously, Viggo Mortensen is too old to play Aragorn again, especially when this version of Aragorn is younger than the one he played originally 20 years ago. But I know he would be everyone's fan cast. So who do you get? As stated before, I said I would prefer a unknown up-and-coming actor. But as I also said, I think you need a bit of star power to put butts in seats for the film. I think this film in particularly is going to need a little help. A few of the suggestions that I've seen online are people like Dan Stevens, Robert Pattinson, Nicholas Hoult, which they're great actors, don't get me wrong. I love them in most of everything they do. But do I see them as Aragorn? Right now, it's really hard for me to, but I don't know if that's just because I'm such a diehard fan for the series that it's hard for me to see anyone else in those roles from those movies. But I will say I wish the best of luck to anyone who does eventually get the role, because, you know, we've seen this thing happen before so many times now where there's a role that's been well done and the character's beloved by all the fans, and then anytime someone tries to do that role other than that one actor, they immediately get ridiculed even before we even seen any concept art or footage or a trailer or anything of them. They could end up crushing the role better than the original person, but they immediately get so much backlash just because they're trying to do a role that someone else has already played. And this is one of those roles that needs to be handled very carefully when it comes to casting, because we really don't want a Liam Hemsworth Witcher type of situation for Lord of the Rings. So these are just my initial thoughts of this film. I could keep going for hours and hours, but I don't want to have to edit that long of a video. I just really hope it does well, especially since Jackson and Serkis are the main voices behind the creative team. But I guess we'll find out in 2026. So let me know in the comments, are you excited for this film? Is there any other story that they might have access to that you would like to see made adapted into a film? Do you think they're going to do more story adaptations, or do you think they're going to risk it and make their own original content? Let me know. Thanks for watching, guys.